Welcome to Investors Insights. Our topic today is dancing bears, raging bulls. As we go forward this week, we think that's going to be the big debate. And I'm joined today by my colleagues Trey Booth, Bobby Norman, and Adam Van Zant on portfolio strategies here at Five Plan Partners to just have debate and discussion regarding the topics we see for the next actually probably few weeks. As states reopen, as the economy starts to resume trying to get back to normal, and companies throughout the country are deciding how they're going to handle the coronavirus situation in regards to social distancing, as well as how to do business. So with that said, though, the markets have opened up here, starting to show a slight downturn. And Trey, you brought up some interesting points that may be having a negative impact on the markets. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so with the uncertainty around the coronavirus, it is almost comforting to see an unknown or an uncertainty that's a little bit familiar. And the markets are trading down this morning on some uncertainty that we've seen in the past. The news out that there's escalating tensions between the U.S. administration and the Chinese administration about trade and about supply chains. And so that, while that is a negative to the market, it's definitely, I'd say, a dancing bear for sure. It is a bear we've seen before, and one we can kind of calculate. And I think companies in corporate America have prepared for that tension. The tension seemed to have dissipated with everyone focusing on the singular enemy of the coronavirus. But to see that familiar dance between the U.S. and China come back up, rear its ugly bear head, is almost a little bit comforting. We see the market trading down on that, but it's something. It's a known unknown that we can deal with a little bit better than the unknown unknowns that have been sitting the market up and down every day by what seems like historic proportions.
Yeah, well, and just to remind our viewership, bears like to take their claws and come downward to hit somebody. From the standpoint of raging bulls, they charge and they want to raise their heads in that way. So a big battle now between, as the economy opens up, as to which direction this market will go. And I also want to emphasize, and Trey, if you want to elaborate on this, is the fact that the stock market will always give the indications of things to come. So if as optimism gets back into play, the stock market usually will always move forward before the actual economy picks up.
Yeah, that's right. The stock market typically advances months before the economy turns around. So when you see the market kind of roll over like it has the last couple of days, it's almost saying, hold on, not so fast, my friend. And then we see this news about escalating tensions between the two largest global economies. That may be an indication as to the market saying that, we're not out of the woods yet, as it were.
And Bobby, you debated in the discussion we had this morning in terms of the news that's coming out and how people are viewing the opportunities that are out there. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the market is coming into May having had a good April, but we wouldn't be surprised to see the market have to grind through May as the economy tries to reopen. We deal with the negative news around corporate earnings and also more economic pain. But also, one of the most common questions that we received in April was, how can the market be up slightly with so much negative economic news? So a few things to consider. One, like you said earlier, the market is forward-looking. So possibly the market is saying, okay, the worst is behind us. Also, we talked about this last week. The Federal Reserve has taken unprecedented steps to put liquidity in the system, and they've done so in a record time. Also, even though we're seeing high unemployment, we're still seeing employees contribute to their 401ks. That is creating the bike. And so, we expect to grind through May, but this is why we have a diversified strategy in your portfolio for these kind of times.
No, absolutely. Nobody knows for sure when the bottom to this market's going to occur. But what we do know, there's valuations out there that we're watching closely, that if the market should trade down, there may be great buying opportunities, or from the standpoint, all of a sudden we have a drug treatment that is very positive, gives people confidence to get back out in the economy and in the businesses. Then from that standpoint, Those kind of announcements are going to make a huge difference. And that said, and I appreciate what you also added in our debate this morning, Bobby, about what the Fed has done is unprecedented. In some ways, we're in uncharted water, and this whole scenario will be studied for many, many years from an economic history standpoint. So I think that's very valid, as well as people that are still working, contributing to their 401ks. And Adam, you jumped in there and talked about GDP, what's going on in Europe. So we've talked about China-U.S. trade wars. We've talked about in our country. And then what about in looking at Europe versus the U.S.?
Yeah, Greg. And to Bobby's point, we look at future indicators. Let's look at backwards indicators. We talked about GDP last week, of course, coming in at a negative number of 4.8%.
Right.
Now let's compare that to Eurozone GDP. That was down 14.4%. That's
Right.
almost 3 times as much. So, the GDP, like we talked about last week, is the economic health of a nation. Let's look at Europe. Is this a future indicator of what we might see in the next coming months? To the theme of the vlog, we might see bears starting to come out of the woods more so often than not.
No, absolutely. And it's a great point to make also, because one of the things throughout my career as we've had these downturns is that new innovation arrives, new business models show up. In Europe, you've got scenarios, they don't have some of the innovation in technology and research that we have here in the United States. So everybody will be watching closely to see, is it an indicator for the U.S. of things to come, or is it that from the standpoint the U.S. will continue to move forward and recover quicker than Europe will? And so those debates and discussions, and going back to Bobby's earlier point about diversification, being in international markets, that's something we're going to continue to be looking at, not only the valuations in the United States in our markets, but also in Europe. So on that note, we will keep you updated. This is going to be a big debate, the dancing bears versus the raging bulls. And as the pieces of the puzzle come together, we're going to point out where we think the trends are in relation to your portfolio and what moves we think we need to make. We hope you have a great week. Follow us on social media, and thank you, all of you who continue to share and forward our vlogs to friends, family, and colleagues. It's one of the greatest introductions and compliments you can give us. Have a great week.